The crew of the squadron destroyer is in formation at a large assembly. Having looked at the even rows, I call 3 redcoats. Radio operator Alexei Solovyov, turbine driver Peter Vakrushev, signalman Sergei Stepanov out of the line. On the faces of surprise, joy, confusion, friends still do not believe in their good fortune. I carefully observe the others. They are smiling. Good, kind envy shines in the eyes of the 3 comrades. There are no frowns, no dissatisfied. It means that they approve of our choice. It means that we were not mistaken. And the task was not easy. In the morning, as soon as it became known that the personnel of our ship should allocate 3 people to the land front near Odessa, more than 150 reports were on my desk. I went through these sheets for a long time, read the scanty lines written in neat calligraphic handwriting, then hurriedly, nervously the letters were dancing. Different people wrote, but their thoughts and feelings are the same. Everyone is eager to go to the front. Everyone dreams of a feat. Some reports are accompanied by short statements. I ask the party organization to accept me as a candidate for membership in the party. I want to go into battle as a communist. I know all these redcoats, petty officers. You can rely on anyone. Excellent sailors, wonderful comrades. The more difficult it is to make a choice, we must select the most worthy. Only then there will be no offense to others. The ship's commissar, senior political officer Booth, came into the cabin. He saw me going through my reports, made a joke. "Are you playing solitaire? You know the sailors are on duty at the Ute, waiting for you. Everyone wants to talk to you personally, to prove that it's him who should be sent. They don't give me a pass either. I barely got out." We go through the reports together. The commissar reads them and admires them. Well done, guys. "I know without you, Timofey Timofeyevich. Tell me, who should we stop on?" "We can't decide that alone. Let's call our comrades and consult." I invite my assistant, commanders of combat units, secretaries of party and Komsomol organizations. We argued for 2 hours, until we agreed on 3 candidates. And now we are seeing off our combat friends. They receive rifles, hand grenades, dressed in the uniform of the first term. The name of the ship is burned in gold on their caps, ruthless. "Remember your ship, do not drop its honor," I say to them. Solovyev, Vakrushev and Stepanov, clutching rifles in their hands, stand in front of the formation, facing the ship's flag. Solovyev asked for the words. "Our dear friends, thank you for your trust. We swear that we will justify it. Here's my visor. It will always remind me of you, of my home ship. We sailors know how to fight, and if we have to die, we'll die for the sake of victory. Beat the fascists from the sea, and we'll destroy them on land. We'll meet with victory. We'll meet with victory." The 3 go around the formation, shake hands with their friends, then go to the boat. The engine hums quietly. The boat pulls away from the side. I'm standing on the upper platform of the gangway with my hand on my cap. With my eyes I give a sign to the horn player standing next to me. He raises the horn, and a long signal calling floats over the bay. Usually this signal is used to greet and see off the big bosses on ships. Now it sounds in honor of ordinary sailors. Deviating from the regulations, I feel no remorse. Along with the singing of the horn from the destroyer carries a powerful hurrah, sailors. We see our friends off to battle, to glorious deeds. Let the sailors remember this moment. Merciless more and more often goes to sea. We convoy transports to besieged Odessa. In each campaign we fight off enemy aviation, engage in battle with enemy artillery batteries, take all measures to protect ourselves and to protect the transports from being blown up by mines. On August 24th, 1941, we returned to Sevastopol. The sailors are still under the impression of what they saw in Odessa. Before our eyes, enemy bombs fell on the beautiful city. Houses collapsed, the smoke of fires rose to the sky. We saw corpses of children and women in the streets. Our hearts are burning with hatred to the enemy. It is hard for the defenders of Odessa. From 3 sides the enemy encircled the city. Communication with the country is maintained only by sea. Ships are not easy to get through to the city. Fascist planes and artillery do not spare bombs and shells. The city was left without water. The pumping station, which supplied water from the Dniester, captured by the Germans. Our ships carrying water rarely manage to pass fascist pilots' hunt for them with special fury. Water is given on cards. Troops and inhabitants suffer from thirst. But people hold on, pressed against the sea, experiencing all sorts of hardships. The garrison strikes the enemy crushing blows. The glory of Yakov Osipov's naval regiment rattles all over the fleet. Sailors terrify the enemy with their dashing bayonet attacks. We are proud that our ship's envoys fight in this heroic regiment. The name of our ship, Merciless, fully corresponds to our mood. No mercy for the enemy. A barge with ammunition has arrived. Sailors are running down the gangway, bending under the weight of shells. They work in silence. Faces sullen, determined. All are full of desire to prepare the ship for battle faster and back to the sea, to Odessa. In the evening we go to sea. We are followed by 3 transports. They bring troops and gasoline to Odessa. The night passes quietly. The morning has come. The sea is quiet, gentle. But the sailors have stopped trusting the silence. Signallers are looking at the water surface and the clear blue sky until their eyes hurt. So far there is not a speck on the horizon and no airplanes are seen in the sky. We are going at a slow pace, adjusting to the slow transports. The enemy does not show, and yet the gunners do not move away from the guns. At any minute we can expect an attack. By evening we saw the shore. The glow of fires scarlet in the twilight, flashes of gunshots flicker all along the coast. Odessa is close. We pass its suburb Novaya Dufanovka. We know that there is an enemy battery here. Why does it take so long for it to get dark? In the dark we might have slipped through unnoticed. But now the Germans have seen the caravan. 4 lights flashed on the shore. Water columns rose up near one of the transports. And then we heard 4 loud explosions. We've got to save the caravan. Merciless turns around and at full speed slides between the shore and transports, leaving behind a plume of smoke. An impenetrable wall of smoke shields the ships from enemy observation. The enemy battery continues to fire, but now at random, wasting shells. The Germans realize this. They stop firing on the transports and transfer fire on the destroyer. Fountains of water swept up by the explosions arise from one and the other side. Maneuvering, dodging the hit. Finally, turning abruptly, hiding in their smoke screen. The fascist battery releases a few more shells and falls silent. Our trials are just beginning. The whole coast is occupied by the enemy. Not far from the village Fontanka is another 120mm German battery. It is waiting for the caravan to approach it. How to save the transports? There is only one way out to divert the enemy's attention from them. Let him shoot at the destroyer. We know that the battery is land-based. Devices for firing on fast-moving marine targets on it is not. It's not easy for its gunners to hit our swift destroyer. Merciless is heading straight for the shore. Before the enemy 30 cable meters, and the Germans are silent. What's the matter? Timofey Timofeyevich, I asked the commissar standing next to me, why do you think they are not firing? They're waiting, devils. And we'll tickle them. I order our artilleryman, Senior Lieutenant Vasily Vasilievich Yarmak, to open fire on the battery. The trouble is we don't know its exact coordinates. We're choosing a place where it's most likely to be. The ship's guns turned toward the shore. There are short bells ringing. That's the signal. Load the guns. The chains of elevators feeding shells from the cellars rattled. In a few seconds, the ship shuddered the entire hull. Friendly, deafeningly struck the guns. On the dark shore, fire bursts light up and go out. Our shells burst. At first, except for them, nothing can be seen. But then 4 blue-white tongues cut the darkness. The Germans couldn't stand it. Their battery responded to our fire. We pinpoint its location and now we hit it with all our guns. The duel takes a fierce character. Closer and closer to us falling enemy shells. Without ceasing fire, the ship draws a zigzag. The Germans have to constantly change the sight. And yet their fire is quite accurate. One shell bursts just off the side of the ship. We're splashed from head to toe with water. Shrapnel rattles the deck and superstructures. Fortunately, no one was hit. While the German battery was shelling us, the transports calmly passed the dangerous area. There is no need to continue the duel. We put a smoke screen, and under its cover, we are moving away from the shore, catching up with the transports. The destroyer stops the cars not far from the Vorontsovsky lighthouse. We long follow the incoming transports in the harbour until the darkness does not hide them. Our task is accomplished. Troops and valuable cargo delivered to Odessa. We lie down on the return course. At the traverse of the Bolshoi Fountain lighthouse, we slow down. Here we must stay until morning, waiting for further orders. The units defending Odessa may call for fire at any time of day. It is dangerous to stand in the harbour. The port is under artillery fire. The night is black, impenetrable. Not a light around. Only the ominous glow does not go out over Odessa and its suburbs. On the tanks smoulder red coals of cigarettes. After the alarm went off, the sailors came together to smoke at the cutlass. They hear jokes, laughter. I hear the voice of Petty Officer of the Second Article Vladimir Siknashvili, commander of the commander's section. Artilleryman still excited after the recent battle. And rightly in the song is sung, "The brave fears the bullet. The brave does not take the bayonet. How dashingly we galloped today under the very nose of the enemy. And no matter what, we peppered the fascists with pepper, but we didn't get a scratch and delivered the transports to the target." We are walking in the darkness a few miles from the shore in alternating courses. My eyelids are slipping. I am on my feet for the second day. To dispel sleep, I walk along the bridge. There is no time to rest when the enemy is near. Be on the alert. At midnight, cipher operator brings a radiogram signed by the commander of the Odessa Defense Area, Rear Admiral G.V. Zhukov, to make an artillery strike on the accumulation of enemy equipment and manpower in the area of Hildendorf, Vizierka, to support the Marines. We're getting closer to the shore. I contact by radio with correction posts. From the shore, transmit wait until morning. Dawn catches us near the Big Fountain lighthouse. The day again promises to be sunny and quiet. For us it is a sorrow wait for the enemy air raid. Once again I'm communicating with the corrective posts. The commander of the 1st Marine Regiment, Colonel Yakov Ivanovich Osipov, responds, gives us the coordinates of the target and adds, "You will open fire on my order." The alert signal raises the sailors. Most of them were resting at the guns. The cannon covers come off in a flash. One by one, the battle station commanders report ready. My assistant Lieutenant Captain Kapistov summarizes many of these reports into one. "Comrade Commander, the destroyer Bespochadny is ready for battle." I look at my watch. "Very good, Alexei Nikolaevich. In a minute we're done. Keep it up from now on." "Yes, keep it up." The officer responds with youthful enthusiasm. A wary silence on the ship. Artillerymen froze at the guns. The radio operators clamped their earphones tighter not to miss the command from the shore. Merciless quietly splits the water surface. The silence is broken only by the cry of seagulls and the splash of dolphins frolicking nearby. Finally, the long-awaited words come over the radio: "Open fire." At once our guns rumbled. Scared seagulls rushed and flew away. And from the shore an enemy battery is already hitting us. From behind the horizon crawls a huge red sun. In its rays the water columns from shells seem like flaming torches, and the sea is all ominously red, like molten metal. In a short pause between salvos I catch an alarming cry of the signalman of the petty officer of the second article, Ivan Kuksov. There are airplanes on the left 90. I move the handles of the machine telegraph to full forward. The ship is gaining speed. The elastic wind presses in my face. Our anti-aircraft guns slammed shrilly, hastily. Lurching from the steep turns, Merciless is zigzagging, not allowing the enemy to conduct targeted bombing. The rate of fire does not decrease. We shoot at the shore with our starboard side and fight off the planes with our left. Junkers, stretched out in a chain, one by one dive into the dive. In the thunder of cannonade, intertwined squeal of falling bombs and explosions. The sea is boiling. Cascades of water fall on the ship. Clouds of smoke blind us. At times when the smoke clears, I see sailors, stripped to the waist, wet with sweat and spray. They are working at the guns. Osipov radios from the shore, you're hitting well. Add more. And merciless, maneuvering among the explosions, beats and beats. Dozens of bombs dropped by Nazi pilots. Enemy artillerymen fired hundreds of shells. But we're all intact and shooting. In front of our eyes falls into the sea, shot down by US plane. Osipov radios again, thanking for the support. We sigh with relief. Guns are silent. Sailors, tired after a tense battle, remove from the deck shell casings, tidy up the heated guns. For the last time we cast a glance in that direction, where heroic Odessa is fighting the enemy, and take a course to Sevastopol. One more voyage was made, usual in those days for many ships of the Black Sea Fleet. Life demands learn. In Sevastopol returned at dawn. The destroyer refueled with fuel, oil and ammunition. Sailors had a chance to rest a little, and I still have to go to report to the squadron commander on the battleship Sevastopol. I went down to my cabin to change my clothes. With regret, looked at the unmade bed for the entire campaign, has not been able to lie down once. Rear Admiral Vladimirsky met cordially. First of all, he asked about my health. He didn't believe my cheerful answer. You don't look well. You need to rest, so I won't keep you long. Tell me how you fought. I briefly report how the voyage went. Vladimirsky listened, and then poured questions. There seemed to be no end to them. Did you notice at what heading angle the enemy planes were approaching the ship? And at what altitude? In what formation they were flying? How long were they in a dive? How were the bombs dropped since in one run? What was the heap of bombs dropped? How long did the bombs fly from the time they lifted off the plane until they hit the water? And how did the planes maneuver out of the attack? The commander also inquires in the same detail about enemy batteries, about the accuracy of their fire, about the distance at which they detect the ship, and from what distance they open fire on it. I confess that these questions surprised me. How can you think of such trifles in battle? When bombs fell on us, we thought only about how to avoid them. True, something I noticed, junkers attacked us at sharp angles, approached us at an altitude of about 4,000 meters. This is not enough, says the Admiral. We must know absolutely everything about the enemy. Without it, we cannot win. Cautiously trying to object. On the bridge, command, not research. Remember, a true commander is always more or less a researcher, especially in battle. Together we discuss how to better observe the tactical methods of the enemy. We'll have to involve all the officers of the ship. And now go to Elisiv, says Vladimirsky. He wants to see you. Probably he has prepared a new task. I get to the Grafskaya pier by boat. I stand on granite steps for a long time. I took off my cap. The sun shines affectionately. A light breeze pleasantly cools the hot head. The day is marvelous. I can't believe that there is a war. Yesterday's battle seems like a dream. I squat down, dip my hand into the warm emerald water. Little skittish crabs run funny, sideways on the wet stone. I try to catch them. It looks silly from the outside, a grown man, an officer, amusing himself like a child. I get up, pull on my tunic. I have to go. Slowly I walk up the steeply rising street. Here it is, my favorite city. This is where my service began. My family lived here. My children grew up here. Just recently I was drinking soda water at this kiosk with my sons Lenya and Eric, and suddenly it turned out that I had not brought any money with me. I had nothing to pay with. I was embarrassed, and the young saleswoman was even more embarrassed. We began to apologize to each other. The girl calmed us down. It's nothing, you'll pay afterwards, but we still ran home and brought the money. And here is the summer movie theatre, where my wife and I like to visit. And again I remembered a picture of the past days. I came back from the sea, persuaded my wife to go to the movies. On the way back I asked her, "Well, Shura, did you like the picture?" "I haven't seen it." "What do you mean? You haven't seen it?" "Just like that, I didn't see it, that's all. I went for your sake. If I don't go, you'll be offended. And I haven't slept all night. You know how restless our Lenya is. So I slept through the whole movie. It all seems like a long time ago. There was a city on the seashore, beautiful, alluring. Its streets were filled with noisy, cheerful crowd, especially in the hours of dismissal of sailors from ships. Women in flowery dresses smiled at people in snow-white navy uniforms and tunics. In summer, the whole coast is dotted with bathers. The generous southern sun covered naked bodies with bronze tan, and everywhere you could hear the happy laughter of children. That's gone now. I see another city silent and stern, like a warrior preparing to repel an enemy attack. The rare passers-by are anxious, hurried. You no longer see smart dresses, dapper white uniforms with blue collars. The clothes of people became emphasized strict working overalls, soldiers' gymnasies, dark blue flannels of sailors. People are used to war. They are not in awe of the traces of recent bombings, burned and destroyed buildings, sidewalks, torn by craters and piled with piles of rubble. A group of workers and laborers with crowbars and shovels on their shoulders pass by me. Sevastopol residents are building fortifications around the city. Involuntarily add a step. Not to walk now in Sevastopol. Having issued a pass, I pass to the fleet headquarters. Chief of Staff Rear Admiral I.D. Elisiv, as well as half an hour ago Vladimirsky, inquisitively asks about the campaign, the actions of the crew in battle, the tactics of the enemy. He asks to repeat some details, and at this time the pencil in his fingers is running quickly on the paper. This is very, very important. It is necessary that all our commanders know. At his insistence, I draw on a sheet of paper a scheme of maneuvering the ship when setting up a smokescreen and during a duel with an enemy battery. You have a good idea to divert the fire on yourself. I would advise other ships of convoys to do the same. On the tired face of the Chief of Staff appears a smile. That's how much combat experience is gathered. I ask you very much, take more notes in battle, pay attention to every little thing. I hear the same in the communications department, where Captain Second-Rank Nestorov literally squeezes from me everything that was related to the campaign with convoying transports. Only after that he tells me, "You have a new job to do, Comrade Lieutenant Captain. You will escort 3 more transports to Odessa. They are carrying the most important cargo and must arrive at their destination no later than 00 on September 1st. The weather service predicts a storm. This is to your advantage. The Germans will not think that anyone will dare to go to sea in such weather." After finishing my business at headquarters, I'm walking around the city again. I wanted to look at my apartment. Our house is still intact. I unlocked the door. My family evacuated from Sevastopol. The apartment is empty, orphaned. The floor and furniture are covered with dust. And although everything is in its place, the rooms seem alien. I look carefully at the portrait on the wall. My wife and I were photographed in Leningrad when I had just graduated from the school. What young, serene faces. Shura looks like a girl. Where is she now with our chicks? How many worries have fallen on her shoulders? I look around the cupboards full of books. We both love to read, and we both collected our libraries diligently. When will I be able to go through books again? An album with photo cards catches my eye. I flipped through it. Here is our last family photo. The boys stare at the machine in surprise, amused, funny. Will I be lucky to see them again? I wrap the album in newspaper. I'll take it with me on the ship. Let at least the photos of loved ones will always be with me. On the sofa there are toys, teddy bears, brightly coloured cubes, cars. As if my sons were playing with them just now. I felt homesick, so I went to the window. From here you can see the whole southern bay. Colourful from camouflage, cruisers and battleships merge with the shore. At the naval plant are repaired ships maimed in battle. I can see the Merciless moored with its stern against the wall of the mine wharf. The cables were stretched with strings, as if the ship was tearing into the sea with all its might. I was irresistibly drawn there, to my battle buddies. They're my family now. And then I remembered all the conversations I had to have today. My bosses tell me to think, to study. It's not them, it's life itself that demands it. And on my way back to the ship, I'm going to sit everyone down to study. But it turns out that this study is already underway. Everywhere you look on the ship, they're studying. In the cockpit gathered his subordinates, military technician second rank Yakov Stepanovich Kozinets, commander of the electromechanical combat unit. He summarizes the results of work in the campaign. I have no complaints about the machinists. But Kozinets praises them sparingly, more presses on the shortcomings. He reproaches Chief Petty Officer Nikolai Zemlyanukin that he did little with the emergency parties, did not provide them with enough material. Is it possible to put up with it when the ship is in continuous battles and every minute there is a threat of damage to the hull and mechanisms? Chief Petty Officer Chuprikov also listens to not quite pleasant things. It happened that his boiler group failed to regulate the combustion during changes of course, and then a thick cap of smoke burst out of the chimney, demasking the ship. Conclusion: it is necessary to study harder. Adopt the experience of the commander of the 2nd Boiler Department, Petty Officer of the 2nd Article Tugay. He so trained his subordinates that they, for the entire campaign, did not allow a cloud of smoke. Kozinets evaluates the actions of each sailor of his unit. He urges to study more persistently, to train more. This call in his mouth acquires special persuasiveness. Kozinets did not graduate from the Naval Engineering School. He grew from ordinary sailors to the commander of the combat unit. He independently mastered all the wisdom of the most complex ship technology, and now he is one of the best mechanical engineers in the fleet. He has a large household, almost around the clock works our mechanic, and yet he finds time to study. Look in his cabin. On the shelves are technical literature, drawings. Kozinets constantly thinks how to make the mechanisms work even better, even more reliably, and people have become true masters of their craft. Artillerymen, sailors of the Navigational Combat Unit, torpedoists, bosuns assess the lessons of the campaign. People realize that the success of future battles depends on it. It turned out that not everyone in a dangerous moment held confidently. Young torpedoist Suturin during the raid of enemy aircraft hid under the torpedo apparatus. A case out of the ordinary. But, having thoughtfully weighed it, we come to the conclusion it is not only that the guy did not have enough courage, but also that this man fell out of sight of the commanders. In essence, he had no responsibilities in the battle. If, say, he had been assigned to conduct surveillance, or given a rifle to shoot at planes, the sailor would have behaved differently. How to make every sailor fight bravely and skillfully, not knowing fear and confusion in battle. This is what we all need to think about. After summarizing the results of the campaign by combat units, the commissar of the ship called agitators, we have a lot of them. They can barely fit in the officers' quarters. Booth has been paying special attention to the agitators lately. We're hardly ever in the base, and it's rare to get people together on a campaign. Agitators work directly at battle stations. They influence people not so much by words as by personal example. Excellent, know your business, be brave and resourceful in battle, so that all your behavior served as a model for comrades, says agitators Booth. Everyone listens to the words of our commissar. Sailors had time to make sure of his courage and self-control. In decisive moments, the commissar is there, where the most dangerous, calm, confident. One word from him brings the most unstable. Everywhere he turns out to be necessary. Timofey Timofeyevich knows the ship no worse than the most experienced officers, but he knows people even better. Simple, cheerful, sociable, the commissar knows how to touch everyone's heart. And the sailors sincerely love him. I'm listening to Booth talking to the agitators. No, this is not a briefing, it is a heartfelt conversation between comrades doing one common party cause. Here sit people who are always and everywhere with the sailors in battle, and during the rest, live in the same cubicle with them, sleeping on neighboring bunks. They know the moods, thoughts of any of the sailors. Communist petty officer of the 2nd Article Mikhail Rybakov anxiously speaks about senior Red Fleet officer Anatoly Krasovtsev. He is a good sailor, fearless, efficient, knowledgeable. But in recent days he has become sad, withdrawn in himself. He has grief his native village is occupied by Germans. The sailor is worried about his parents' despairs. I would support him, encourage him, but he is proud, he is going through the misfortune alone. He has stopped talking to his comrades. How to help a man. A lot of such unexpected questions arise before the communists. Most of the sailors are in a cheerful mood. The Commodore, petty officer of the second article Nabiulia Nasirov, enters the conversation. They spare no effort in the campaigns and rejoice in every battle. But now we are too far apart. For a long time we do not leave our combat posts and do not know what is being done in other units. And on the ship's radio we only hear commands. Can't it be transmitted how the battle is going, who is doing what, who has distinguished himself? It is very important for the sailors. The commissar gently pushes me in the side. Keep up, Commander. And I'm listening to the conversation more and more attentively. The guys say something sensible. We do not use radio broadcasting well, and with its help you can talk to all sailors in the campaign. After all, on other ships even radio newspapers have become a custom. Can't we organize them? We understand that our commanders have more troubles. I hear a soft voice of the turbine operator, petty officer of the second article Mikhail Misko. But they must find time to talk to the sailors. A commander's word means a lot to a sailor in a difficult moment. We forgot about songs, says Rybakov. With the beginning of the war, our amateur songs died. And now it would be very useful. After the battle you want to have a good rest. A soulful song lifts the mood. And we should think about the library. It's bad that the sailors have stopped reading. We should advise them what to read. An interesting book is also an aid in war. We must keep an eye on the barks, I hear a voice in the corner. Now, referring to the difficulties of camp life, they often started to cook in a shoddy way. But food also strengthens a fighter's spirit. Booth is looking at me. How did we miss these things? I used to take little interest in the affairs of agitators. I thought it was enough that the commissar deals with them. Now, listening to them, I realize my mistake. I should consult them more often. In the evening I invite the captains of transports to the Ruthless. All three of them are already elderly sailors, solid, knowing their value. Next to them I feel like a boy. It's good that I know someone among them, Pismeni, with whom we became friends when he still commanded the passenger ship Lenin. And now I have to give instructions to these honourable people, to teach them. I don't know where to start the conversation. Pismeni helps me. He gently places his huge stiff palm on my hand and says with a smile, Grigory Pudovich, don't look at our years. Let's teach us. The old sailors listen attentively to my story about the last campaign. Together we are leaning over the map, determine the route of transition, the order of actions in case of an enemy air raid. We agree on signals and tactical numbers of ships in the marching order. To confidently hold the line, the head in the Kielvatanoy column put the most slow-moving transport. We leave tomorrow at 9:00. Speed 10 knots. We part as good friends. The captains trust me, have no doubt that the merciless will not leave them in trouble, will be able to protect them. And I am confident in the experience and skill of the old sailors, and that they will exactly fulfill my every signal. Such faith in each other is vital in a convoy. Crew rest. Duo. Sailors who are free from watch and duty rest. Each uses these hours in his own way. Some write letters, others ponder the chessboard, others fight dominoes. In almost every cabin you'll see a sailor with an accordion. Quietly he brings out his favourite song, and his comrades, surrounded by him, as thoughtfully, intimately sing along. Junior political officer Ivan Grigorievich Noskov comes down to the 5th cubicle. He sits down to the table where several sailors are writing letters. Red Fleet Mikhail Sharapov approaches him and asks in a whisper, Comrade Junior Political Officer, can I write to my family how we beat the Nazis at Hildendorf and how their airplane was shot down? You can, answers Noskov, and describe in detail how you yourself acted in battle. You showed yourself well. The sailor's face blushes. No, it's inconvenient to talk about myself. Well, leave a few lines at the end of the letter. I'll write how you fought. Thank you. The sailor was happy. Though the conversation is whispered, but Krasavetsev, a senior redcoat sitting next to him, hears everything. Having chosen a moment, he also addresses Noskov. Be kind enough to check what I've written. Why should I read other people's letters? Only from the point of view of grammar. I'm afraid there are mistakes. Noskov fluently runs through the sheet, corrects a few spelling mistakes. The rest is all correct. The sailor lowers his eyes, hesitates. Finally, he dares. Comrade Junior Political Officer, will you add a couple of lines for me? My father is very interested in how I serve. You know, he's an old worker, strict, proud. Every time he writes to me, remember, son, about the honor of our working family, there were never cowards in it. Everyone was brave and straight. Ivan Grigorievich smiles, pulls out a fountain pen from his pocket, and writes sprawlingly. Your son, Senior Red Fleet Krasovtsev, in battle, is brave and resourceful. The family can be proud of him. Secretary of the Party Organization of the Ship, Junior Political Officer Noskov. The sailor gratefully accepts his sheet back, his eyes shining with happiness. If you knew how much you did for me. My old men will be happy. And at a neighboring table a dispute is raging. Chess players are competing. They keep quiet, but the fans don't get along. Someone couldn't stand it and told his comrade to make a move. The others were outraged. What a game of hints. A fool can win that way. The other side is trying to launch a counterattack. You're still checkmate. Learn to move the pieces first, and then you can vote. A junior political officer is invited to be the umpire. He decides quickly and unappealingly. Clues to the side that allowed the clue. One of the players and the comrade who did him a bearish favor grumble resentfully. The others are pleased. Peace is restored, and another pair sits down at the board. Bursts of laughter come from the far corner of the cockpit. There are domino lovers, the most irrepressible people. In the heat of the moment, the players are so clashing their knuckles on the table that it seems that the deck shudders, as in artillery firing. Many people are fond of Sea Goat, and every cabin has its own champions. Dominoes games turn into whole battles, in which not only 4 players sit with knuckles at the table, but also 12 fans, literally piled on the shoulders of the players to better see the course of the battle. The fans are now demanding to play trash. The losing pair must make room for new partners. But the winners are against it. They want to continue to compete with their previous unsuccessful partners. To punish them, the defeated will play the next game, standing up, and in gas masks. And wearing gas masks. The fans don't mind watching such a spectacle. Some joker managed to run to the galley and bring 2 peeled cabbage pokers, the most suitable prize for the unfortunate goats. The knuckles swelled with renewed vigor. But the game had to be interrupted in the middle. The cheerful trill of the watchman's tune dinner for the crew rang through the cabin. Instantly the tables were freed, cans were pushed to them. Specially allocated sailors, whose duty it is to receive food in the galley, rattling copper pots rushed to the gangway. A cistern is not only a dish in which food is brought from the galley, it is also a group of sailors eating from a given cistern. Each tank has its own number, its own duty officer, who during the week delivers the food, distributes it, washes the dishes. The position is quite responsible and hectic. The first to return with a full tank was Red Fleet Belus. He had already descended to the last step of the gangway, as suddenly something rattled. His comrades, who are waiting for him with spoons at the ready, can't see what happened. But those sitting closer to the gangway are laughing, clapping their hands, shouting. Write it down. In each cabin a list of cases when a tanker spills food without bringing it to the table is neatly kept. It's very unpleasant to be on that list. Today such a misfortune happened to Belus. The embarrassed sailor silently takes a mop and starts wiping the deck. Behind his back there is laughter, humour. In the address of tank number 5, Belus's comrades' sharp and sometimes caustic jokes fly. They sit in silence, and in their eyes, staring at the offender, glitter not at all affectionate sparks. By the grace of Belus, the friends now have to sit under a hail of ridicule, when at the other tables people are eating delicious borscht. The spilled dinner can only be received again in the last turn. Therefore Belus is in no hurry. Thoroughly cleaned the deck, he washed his hands and only then went to the galley. He is followed by the angry whispering of his comrades. Bear. Resinia. Belus disappears for a long time. At the other tables, the first course had already been finished. The galleys were about to go for the second course. And then Belus appeared, triumphant and shining. The sailors looked into the cistern he had brought and gasped. The cistern was half filled with meat, and the main thing, marvellous appetizing masolkas, which all of us consider a delicacy. Friends immediately forgive their gully all sins. At other tables they envy the fifth tank and scold the cocks behind their eyes. That's how they punished the negligent tankman. Of course no one thought of complaining. The sailors know the price of a joke and are glad of every funny story. A good dinner added vigour, revival. I walk through the living quarters. I listen with pleasure to friendly songs to accordion, laughter and jokes. I myself take part in exciting sailor games and heartfelt conversations. Amazing people we have. Who from the outside would believe that only yesterday these serene, laughing guys were in battle, risked their lives, and that tomorrow they will again go to meet the dangers? No hardship or privation can break the spirit of men who can laugh so light-heartedly between battles. In the storm. I got up early. The crew was still asleep. On deck I met the Commissar and Kabistov. Together we decided to check the ship's routine. In the Navy it is so customary in any conditions the uniform organization of service is observed. Whether it is peacetime or war, life on the ship flows measuredly, obeying strict regulations. And now we are watching the wake-up. Some malfunctions did not escape Kabistov's keen eye. During the wake-up, some of the watchmen did not turn on the light. The bilge men were late to give water to the wash basins. Electricians did not start fans in time to ventilate the rooms. It's the little things. But when it comes to statutory order, everything is important. And Kabistov strictly reprimands the guilty. In general, the day started well. Sailors rose amicably. After breakfast at the signal, make the ship ready for battle, and march, all rushed to their places. The wind is getting stronger. Even in the bay, destroyer begins to sway decently. I invite the officers to the wardroom, familiarize them with the combat task. I especially warned that, despite the storm, the ship must be maintained on high alert, watch vigilantly, unrelenting. At 8:40 a.m. Semaphore request permission to go to sea. We receive good. I go up to the bridge, take the report of the watch officer Lieutenant Dyachenko. I go to the machine telegraph, examine it. I ask who is standing on the wheel. I look around the upper deck from bow to stern. The gunners have taken their places at the guns. The mooring crews are lined up. Everything is so familiar. Kabistov is standing by, waiting for orders. Get off the anchor, Alexei Nikolaevich, I say to him. He casts a pleased look at me. My assistant knows how to appreciate trust. He is happy when he can be independent. I like this trait in him. He will make a good commander. The lieutenant captain has been transformed. Powerfully, firmly sounds his voice. Kabistov commands with inspiration. Remove the gangway. Give the right mooring. The left mooring is to be poisoned. Let's go the spire. I watch his actions with satisfaction. But it seemed to me that he hesitated with the order. I want to interfere, but he calmly commands. Give me the left. Just what I was going to order. The wind is blowing to port. When the moorings are given and the anchor is not yet selected, the ship, of course, began to turn. There's a danger of the stern and propellers hitting the neighbouring barrels. Kabistov foresees it. The right machine gives a move forward, shifts the rudder. The ship stops turning and slowly moves forward. Anchor clear. Reports the bosun. Gaining speed, the ship is heading towards the bosoms, towards the exit from the bay. I shake Kabistov's hand firmly. Thank you, Alexei Nikolaevich. The shooting from the anchor was excellent. You can be trusted with the ship. We're lying on the Inkerman lighthouses. The machines are working on the smallest. We're waiting for transports to come up to us. A huge black cloud is approaching from the northeast. The wind is getting stronger. White lambs are running on the sea. The cloud has caught up with us. Immediately darkened around us. A high wave came on the locker, rolled all the way to the ute. licked up everything that was badly fixed. I heard the indignant voice of the chief Bosun, midshipman Radiuk. His subordinates had not seen to it, and 2 covers were torn off and carried away to the sea. A new mighty wave hits the destroyer's cheekbone. The spray reaches the bridge. The ship is lurching so that you cannot stand on your feet, unless you grab something. The guns on the upper deck hide in the foam. When the wave is over, the gunners, wet from head to toe, climb out from behind their shields, sniff, spit, and ready to slink back into cover, stare angrily out to sea, waiting for the next wave. I am calm for the men. It's not the first time we've sailed in a storm. But still, on the radio broadcast I warn everyone to be extremely careful. You cannot joke with the angry sea. Kabistov, pulling his cap over his eyebrows, goes around the ship, checking once again whether everything is securely fastened. Artilleryman Petty Officer 2nd Article Siknishvili on the rostra, struggling with a large tarpaulin cover. Boiler machinists, having removed the cover from the chimney, stacked it badly. It was good that Siknishvili came up and grabbed the tarpaulin when a gust of wind tore it from the roasters. In a cloud of spray, the petty officer, leaning his whole body on the unruly cover, rolled it up and tied it to the banquet. Kabistov, who was nearby, praises the artilleryman, and then reprimands mechanic Kozanits for his oversight. Doesn't it embarrass you that the artillerymen are forced to save your property? Transports are approaching. As agreed, they are lined up in a keel column, one after the other. Merciless goes ahead, 10 cable meters from them, drawing a zigzag first turn to the left at 60 degrees, then at the same angle to the right, and so on without end. Wrapped in wet raincoats, signallers and observers now and then wipe their eyes from the corrosive salt spray and, straining their eyesight, stare into the raging expanse. The commissar walks through the cabins. The sailors, free from watch, are resting without undressing. Some of them lie down on deck chairs without even taking off their wet raincoats. At any second, you can expect a call upstairs. The cabins are stuffy and semi-dark. The portholes are tightly shut. In a storm, it is even more unpleasant here than upstairs. There at least you see the wave with your own eyes. You have time to prepare for it. Here its blows are unexpected. The deck under your feet rolls to the right and to the left. It is not so easy to stay on your feet and even to lie down on the wheelhouse. The impression is that the ship is about to capsize. But the men are not discouraged. Seeing the commissioner, they rush to him, flooded with questions. They are interested in everything what is going on the ship, and what is new at the front. It is not easy to talk. Waves hit the board, the cabin rattles like an empty iron barrel when it is pounded with a hammer. But Booth, even in such an environment, knows how to talk to people. Bypassing the cubicles, the commissar makes his way to the galley. It is necessary to feed the sailors somehow. The cooks have completely lost their way. Everything is spilling out of the cauldrons and pots. They are about to scold them. We had to give up the first one. In a few minutes the contents of the cauldron were almost all on the deck. We cooked buckwheat porridge. The bokoviu. Showing wonders of acrobatics, spread it around the cabins and fighting posts. The more experienced sailors were happy with it, eating and praising it, though it was slightly undercooked, and sometimes diluted with sea salt water. Bukovoy was swept by a wave when he ran on the upper deck. A younger sailor would scoop up food with a spoon, his face would twist and turn green. A man who's already seasick from the swell. In the end, the sailor clamps his mouth with the palm of his hand and runs for fresh air. The hardest of all, perhaps, are the machinists. Boilers and turbines are hot. The air is saturated with vapours of fuel oil and oil. Even in calm weather it is not easy here, and in a rocky weather it is nothing to talk about. The deck, shining like a mirror, rises and tilts, your feet slip on it, and you can't grasp anything. The heat makes everything hot as fire. Taking a moment to calm down, I look into the boiler rooms and engine rooms. The guys are completely weakened. Dirty, sweaty, exhausted. It is pitiful to look at them. But when you come up, they smile, joke, trying to outshout the noise of fans. Good weather, comrade commander. It's been a long time since we were so shaken. Turbinistas even invited me to have a snack with them. It turns out that they brought raw potatoes from the galley, put them in a kettle, and connected a hose to its sock, through which they let steam. The potatoes turned out to be delicious. I leave the drivers reassured these will withstand everything. We are still zigzagging. For 3 minutes, Merciless rushes towards the wind and waves, then thrusting its nose into the water, then standing on its haunches. For the next 3 minutes, the waves crash against the side of the ship, as if trying to topple it on its side. The masts against the low-hanging clouds make huge intricate arcs and figure eights. Behind, the transports are barely visible in the grey haze. At times they are hidden from us by the crests of waves. We can see through binoculars the ships are plunged into the foaming maelstrom up to their superstructures, but they go on and on heavy, slow and stubborn. So far, everything is normal. The headquarters correctly predicted in such weather the Germans will not stick their noses in the sea. For their aviation weather is not flying. Our caravan follows without incident. It's getting dark. At night, the wind whistling and waves crashing are even more deafening. I order to stop all movement on the upper deck. In such a mess, you won't notice how you'll be washed overboard. Where are our transports? No running lights, no radio chatter either. The coast is close, and we don't want to be detected by the enemy. Several hours passed in pitch darkness. At last a light flickered timidly in the distance. Comrade Commander, through the wind noise I hear the report of Navigator Bosun. We can see the lights of Odessa lighthouses. In 3 hours, or exactly at 00, we will be in Odessa. And again we see the bloody glow over the fighting city. The light of the fires is reflected in the clouds. The sky itself seems to be red hot. Sailors cannot take their eyes off this terrible picture. Forgotten fatigue, nausea and headache caused by exhausting rocking. We exchange signals with the transports by means of a shaded lantern and bring them to the Vorontsov lighthouse. In the light of the fires we can now see the ships. One after another, struggling with the wave, they slip past us in black shadows. I thank the captains for an excellent voyage together and wish them further success. We are not entering the port. We remain in the waiting area. At slow speed, we're being tossed around even more by the waves, but no one seems to notice the rocking now. The dawn of Odessa makes sailors forget about their own misfortunes. By dawn, the sea began to subside. Merciless at slow speed maneuvered a few miles from shore. About 5 o'clock in the morning, when it was still quite dark, from the shore adjustment post transmitted the coordinates of the target a significant concentration of enemy vehicles and tanks. The enemy is preparing to attack. Immediately give fire, says the radiogram. Merciless lies down on a combat course. Navigator Senior Lieutenant Bosun hastily makes calculations, informs the commander of the artillery combat unit course angle and distance to the target, agree on the point at which the ship will open fire. Based on this information, the central post determines the data for firing. Senior Lieutenant Yarmak went up to the command Dela post and keeps his eyes on the stopwatch. We're going at 10 knots. The navigator's target point is approaching. We're coming up. 5 minutes left, warns Konstantin Ivanovich Bosun. The guns are slowly turning, pointing their barrels at the invisible target. 3 minutes left. Yarmak orders to load the guns. 1 minute left. The gunners fix their eyes on the faintly glowing dials of the targeting devices, trying to align the arrows more accurately. On point. The navigator's voice is so loud that it echoes throughout the bridge, and immediately from the command Dalnomir post follows Yarmak's order. Fire on the German invaders. Bright flashes blind the eyes. The ship shudders. For a moment we are deafened by the rumble, then we hear the distant rustle of our shells. And at once there is dead silence. It seems that the turbofan engines have become less noisy. We can't see the shore in the darkness, but everyone's eyes are fixed on the target. The radio operator, positioned with a portable radio near me on the bridge, transmits to the correction post we have fired a salvo. Report the results. How long seconds can be sometimes. I hear Yarmak asking for the second time what was the setting of the sight and target. His excitement is understandable at such a distance. If you make a slight mistake, you'll hit your own men. It's no sin to say that I feel uneasy too. I'm fumbling on the bridge, smoking cigarette after cigarette. I couldn't stand it. I went into the navigator's cabin, looking at the map. The navigator with a trembling voice proves to me. I checked my calculations again. Everything is correct. Here's our position, here's the target. Distance and heading angle are accurate. Then I realize we probably look funny with our fears. We should calm down ourselves and calm people down. With a smile I say to the senior lieutenant, "Why are you so worried? Only a little time has passed, and do the math, the shells flew 41 seconds to the target, then the adjusters have to determine the place of their fall, the amount of deviation, and only then tell us the correction. All this takes time. We'll wait, and there is nothing to worry about." With these words I leave the navigator's cabin. On the bridge everyone looks at me questioningly. I walk around as calmly as possible, trying to show by my appearance everything is going as well as possible. But I myself have a cat on my heart. "Comrade Commander," shouts excitedly radio operator. "Corps post gives proofreading 1 less, 2 right, move to defeat." Honestly, not only people, the whole ship breathed a sigh of relief. Yarmak from the height of his pigeon house gives commands so that it makes your ears ring. Having made adjustments in the installation of guns, the artillerymen open a barrage of fire with intervals between salvos of 6 seconds. "You're hitting right in the middle of the enemy column," radios the shore. "Good shooting. Well done." On the battle radio broadcast, I pass this message around the ship so that everyone can hear. The agitators were right. I'm convinced now how it inspires people. Sailors at the cannons do not spare no effort. In a few minutes, we fire 150 shells at the enemy. From the outpost, they say cease fire. Thank you very much from the Red Army and Red Fleet. You have perfectly fulfilled your task. The Germans are fleeing. When I read out these words in front of the microphone, there is a loud hurrah in response. Everyone shouts, both those on the upper deck and those working in the inner rooms. Meanwhile, it's already dawning. The sky is clear, not to miss the raid of enemy aviation. Much messed up, the Germans merciless, they will try to take revenge on him. And the coast sets a new task to open fire on the centre of the village Hildendorf, where the movement of enemy troops and equipment is noticed. Hildendorf is far away. For the shells to reach the target, we need to approach the coast, to the village of Novaya Dufanovka, where in the ravine is already familiar to us German battery. Corps post sends one codogram after another, hurrying to start firing. I turn on the microphone and read out, "Let everyone hear." Open fire immediately. The enemy is preparing to attack. We ask you, give fire. Time is of the essence. I look into the faces of my comrades who surrounded me. I see that everyone agrees it is necessary to help our fighting friends. I order. Navigator, plot a course closer to the shore. Senior Lieutenant Bormatin warns. "It's dangerous, Comrade Commander, because they're not only from guns, but from mortars and machine guns can fire at us." "I know, Navigator, but our friends hope for our help, and we must help, no matter what it costs us." The shore is getting closer and closer. So far, it's silent. Apparently, the Germans don't want to decloak themselves early. Merciless came to the right distance, turned sharply to the right, lay on a combat course, reducing the stroke. The navigator reports. At the point. "We're making firing salvos. Corps post records good, we're going in for the kill." Sailors at the guns are straining all their strength. The pauses between salvos are reduced to a minimum. Adjusters report shells are hitting the target. At this time, the German battery began to speak. Its first shells fell with a large flight, but here the water columns grow closer and closer. One shell exploded at the very side. On the deck and superstructures again rattled shrapnel. The commander of the electrical group, Lieutenant Engineer Seletsky, was easily wounded in the power post. We had to interrupt the task and transfer all the fire on the enemy battery, but it turns out that we still do not know the exact location of its guns. We shoot at flashes, and this is not a reliable reference point. The battery continues to fire, and quite aptly. Nothing to do. We put up a smoke screen and 30 knots away into the sea. Correction post anxiously radios why stopped firing. Give a few more volleys, our situation is very difficult. Please fire. Here are your sailors, they ask for help. I thank you in advance for your help. We look at the commissar. Apparently he now remembered his comrades, whom we saw off in the Marines, and our promise that we would always help them in a difficult moment. Come on, Commander Booth said briefly. I order the navigator to lay a course to the shore. And you, Timofey Timofeyevich, I say to the commissar, explain to the people that there are heavy battles near Hildendorf. Our comrades who went to defend Odessa are fighting there. We cannot fail to fulfill their request. Booth went to the microphone and addressed a passionate word to the sailors. In conclusion, he said that the command is confident in the steadfastness and courage of the crew. Merciless approached the shore and again opened fire. Immediately behind the hill flashed pale flares. The enemy battery began to hit the ship. While its shells were falling with underflight, we tried to fire as many shots as possible. The sailors forgot about fatigue. Despite the frantic rate of firing, they had time to write on the shells with chalk for our Soviet motherland, "Death to the invaders." People did not pay attention to the explosions near the board. It never occurred to anyone that these explosions could damage the ship, kill it. To shoot, shoot and shoot, one desire was in everyone. From the corrective post reported that the apparatus has a former radio operator of our ship, Alexei Soloviev. He is a liaison with the commander of the battalion of Marines. Soloviev himself takes the key. Our glorious ship, we read, has kept its word. We are proud of it. Thank you. The enemy shells are tearing at our stern. We have accustomed the enemy artillerymen to small passages, and now we are rushing at full speed. And yet the explosions are close to the ship. Shrapnel-wounded sailor chemist, standing aft at the valves of smoke-forming equipment. The sailor pulls out of his pocket bandage bag, hastily bandages the wounded hand and remains at his battle post. Well done, sailors, you hit well. Praises the shore. Hitlerites have been mixed to the ground, sailors. This radiogram causes an unprecedented rise, and when I order to stop firing, they look at me with bewilderment and resentment. But we have no other choice. Enemy planes have shown up. Having put a smoke screen, we move away from the shore to have more room for maneuver. Bombardment begins. We fight off the planes with 37mm automatic rifles and large-caliber machine guns. Torpedoists, sitting on torpedo apparatuses, shoot from rifles. A deafening crackle stands in the air. One of the planes took a slide to then dive at the ship, but suddenly lay on the left wing, smoke and corkscrewed down. I see the sailors cheering. Wide open their mouths, they shout something, but no voices are heard. Ineffectively dropped bombs and lost one junkers, the enemy squadron disappeared over the horizon. And the coast demands open fire on the village of Ilychevka. This point is also at a great distance. Again, we have to get under the fire of the German battery. Now we shoot at 2 targets, the main caliber at Ilychevka, medium guns at the enemy battery. But from the seaside, a new group of junkers is coming at us. Having interrupted the fire on the shore, we enter into battle with them. I remember the order of the squadron commander. I take out my watch and notebook. But now I put them in the hands of Lieutenant Lushin. Write it down, Vladimir Vasilievich. I don't have time for notes. Continuously turning the handles of machine telegraphs, giving orders to the helmsman. Growing howl of airplanes rushing into the dive, whistle of bombs, thunder of explosions merge into a deafening storm of sounds. Merciless then rushes forward, burying its nose in the foam, then stops the course, turns to the right, left. We're lucky. No bombs hit the ship. Having dropped their cargo, junkers fly away. In such tension passes the whole day. By evening we receive an order from the commander of the Odessa defense area of Rear Admiral Zhukov. 3 transports are leaving Odessa. We must accompany them to Sevastopol. Our faithful ally impenetrable southern night again helps. The caravan is going quietly. I go down to the cabin, analyze my records and records of officers, call signalers to clarify certain moments of the battle. I compare all these data with observations from previous battles. A lot of interesting things. Vladimirsky is right, every battle must be studied. In the morning, as soon as we arrive in Sevastopol, I hurry to the squadron headquarters. Vladimirsky pounces on my calculations. He writes down figures, draws diagrams, compares them with his old records. Well, it fits, you see. So we can draw some conclusions. Did you notice how formulaic their tactics are? Yes, we've seen that fascist pilots approach the ship almost always at an altitude of 4,000 or 5,000 meters. Before lying in a dive, the plane makes a slide. It takes 10-15 seconds. The time of being in the peak 14-18 seconds. After detachment from the airplane before falling into the water bombs fly 7-9 seconds. Now let's weigh the capabilities of the attacked ship. Seeing that the plane makes a slide, the commander gives orders to the helmsman. After that, 7 seconds pass until the ship begins to roll toward the shifted rudder. There are still about 30 seconds before the bombs fall. During this time, the destroyer will pass in an arc of a cable, or even a cable and a half, which is quite enough to avoid a direct hit. We have also established that enemy planes, as a rule, enter the ship from the bow and stern course angles of 35-60 degrees. Consequently, at the moment when the airplane makes a slide, which means that it has already taken aim, it is necessary to try to give it transverse course angles. This confuses the calculations of Nazi pilots, and we notice that the bombs fall with great dispersion. More than once it happened that on transverse course angles half of the bombs fell with a significant overflight, and the other half with the same underflight. Vladimirsky pulls out of the safe manual on evasion from the bomber aviation. Leafing through it, in the document, not a word about dive bombers. All the tactics to combat them has yet to be developed. The commander put aside the instruction, approached the open porthole. We have already studied the character of his rear admiral. Now he can't hear anything. On your words will be one-syllable answer clearly, good, without going into the meaning. Now he's disconnected from everything around him and is deep in his own thoughts. I rise from my chair. Only then the admiral remembers the interlocutor. He thanks me for my report, wishes me success. And now I'm going to sit down again for the figures. We urgently need guidance on dodging dive aircraft. Having said goodbye to Vladimirsky, I went to the Chief of Staff of the squadron, Captain First Rank Vladimir Alexandrovich Andreev. He also asks to tell in detail about the campaign. He is particularly interested in the interaction of enemy aircraft with coastal batteries. He asks how we were communicating with the adjustment posts. Offers to think about how to better organize the coverage of ships' fighter aviation. It's easy to talk to Andreev. You forget that before you boss. Being carried away, we sometimes argue heatedly, defending our points of view. The Chief of Staff smokes a pipe and suddenly asks, "Would you like me to read you some poetry?" He opens a notebook in a paperback and reads. The poems are warm, touching the soul. All about the sea, sailors strong and courageous people. How was it? Beautiful poems, I answer. Whose are they? Andreev is silent, smiling. Are they yours? I guess. I scribbled them down in the middle of the day. They must be printed. Not yet. I still need to trim them, but I don't have time. And it's embarrassing to type them up. Chief of Staff, and suddenly. Poetry. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? It's great when people reveal themselves in unexpected ways. Yes, our esteemed Chief of Staff wrote poems, and good, exciting poems. And I'll tell you frankly, from that day on I respected him even more. Scheduled preventive. The commander of the 5th Combat Unit Kozinets reminded me that our boilers have worked without alkalizing twice as long as they should. Need preventive maintenance and other mechanisms. For a good hour Kozinets listed the faults that should be eliminated by all means. The thrust and support bearings of the left main machine were getting hot. The circulation pump of the right turbine was not working reliably. The oil system had to be checked for a long time. Our mechanical engineer is always like this. At sea, his vast economy works like clockwork, without the slightest complaint. But it is worth coming to the base. As Kozinets begins to complain this is bad, that is bad he himself does not know peace. his subordinates have enough to do, and he rubs me without end. Well, that's what a mechanical engineer should be like. That's why the mechanisms of the ruthless work without fail, because they have such a restless master. After listening to him, I promised to ask the squadron commander to give us time for preventive maintenance. Called the other commanders of combat units. Artilleryman, communications officer, navigator, assistant commander also said that in their household accumulated a lot of urgent matters. Rear Admiral Vladimirsky did not have to beg. Proceed, he said. To successfully fight, we must keep the ship in exemplary order. I give you 8 days for repairs. I cannot more, you know what the situation is now. An open party meeting was held, which was attended by almost all the sailors of the crew. The repair of the ship was perceived as a combat task. To work in a frontline manner, this thought permeated every speech. 8 days was an unprecedentedly short period, but it did not suit us. The meeting decided to complete the repairs in 5 days. Communists will be at the most responsible sites and will show an example of selfless labour. Indeed, it is necessary to work more with people, literally with everyone. It was decided to widely cover the progress of repairs in the leaflets and radio newspaper, in conversations agitators. The meeting called for vigilance, which should be manifested in everything and in a clear organisation of service, so that nothing caught the team by surprise, and in close monitoring of the quality of work, and in the careful study of the mood of sailors. The enemy does not shy away from any meanness to shake the spirit of the Soviet people. Commissar Booth gave an alarming example at the meeting. Sailor Nasirov brought him a letter received from home. It's a strange letter. It says that Moscow is allegedly already occupied by the Germans, our army is all defeated, and at the end his mother advises it's aimless for you, my son, to fight. If you are alive, try to save yourself. The sailor, of course, did not believe this letter. He came to the commissar to share his suspicion. The mother is illiterate. So all this filth was written by someone's enemy hand. Perhaps other sailors are receiving similar panic letters. It is necessary to intensify explanatory work, tirelessly expose harmful rumours, mercilessly treat their peddlers. I listened attentively to the speeches. I was pleased with the unanimity of the sailors. Communists and non-partisans equally supported the common cause. There was no doubt people will do their best to fulfill the task on time. That night, none of the officers slept. They hastily prepared the necessary documentation, thought out the organisation of work, made requests for materials and spare parts. Everyone was aware of the upcoming difficulties. There is a war. Every minute you can expect an enemy raid. So the repairs should be done in such a way that the ship would not lose its fighting ability even for a moment. The night passed restlessly in the cabins too. Some people left, others came, someone was awakened, someone asked about something, because it was necessary to get a certificate about some mechanism, or it was necessary to go to the warehouse. The watchmen were nervous, scolded the most restless in an angry whisper, called for silence. But their efforts were useless. When a sailor or a petty officer was called to an officer, the sailor hastily got up and dressed. He tries to do everything silently. But in life it often happens like this. You want to do as quietly as possible, and you are sure to get caught on something, stumble, knock down something and make such a rumble that you will freeze from fright. The watchman curses, the awakened comrades grumble, it's an outrage. Just when a man has fallen asleep, they wake him up. It's hot and stuffy in the officers' quarters. Portholes are closed, there is no fresh air inflow. Table fans are whirring, but they seem to make it even hotter. The officers sit in their t-shirts, and still sweat runs down their faces. If you wipe yourself with a handkerchief, it immediately becomes wet, even if you wring it out. Who is more resourceful? Hung a towel around his neck, it lasts longer. By morning the preparation for repair was finished. The officers, without undressing, lay down to rest. The sailors, who were painted by the instrument makers for the officers' quarters, tiptoed to the porthole, opened it, and left immediately so as not to wake up the tired commander. They whispered at their comrades in the corridor. Quiet. Ours has been working all night. Let him get at least a little. A little sleep. Call. An hour and a half later the officers were already on their feet. It was necessary to arrange people, to familiarize everyone with the task. At breakfast, Kabistov warned that if the sailors appeared on deck without doing anything, the bosun would take them away and put them on general shipboard work, washing and painting of boards and superstructures. The bosun will always have something to do. The officers looked at each other understandingly. The assistant commander does not throw words to the wind, so it may happen that the sailors will be at the disposal of the bosun when the units are already short of hands. The sailors of the bosun's crew were working in the paint shop on the tank. Ensign Radiuk decided to prepare a lot of paint in advance, so that it would be enough to paint the whole ship. Every now and then he came to the superstructure, putting a glass with fresh paint on it to its surface. He adjusted the colour. Bending over the hatch, he ordered his subordinates to add azure or black. Having diluted the paint, the bosun left a young sailor in the paint shop and went to drink tea. How could our economic bosun know that many people were just waiting for it? The commander of the department of the first machine, petty officer of the second article Misko, having seen off the midshipman with his eyes, immediately went to the paint shop and very politely addressed to the young sailor, "May I have some advice on the painting business from you, as an expert?" The flattered first-year sailor was terribly pleased, and Misko already asked him to go to the roasters, to look at the chimney what to do with it. Should I scrape off the old paint or leave it? If to scrape off, how much dryer and paint will be needed? Not anybody, but the chief machinist came to bow to the young sailor. The first-year sailor has got his nose up, pretending to be a first-class expert. He moved away from the pipe, squinted his eyes, then took a cord out of his pocket and began to measure the area of the surface to be painted. Misko helped him, respectfully questioned him, admired his profound knowledge. Meanwhile, machinists and artillerymen were managing in the paint shop. The capacious paint tank was quickly emptying. The ship knew that no one knows how to prepare paint better than the chief bosun. They also knew about the stinginess of midshipman Radiuk. No matter how much you ask for, you won't get anything. So we had to resort to this, though not quite plausible, but the most reliable way of extracting precious paint. After drinking tea, the chief bosun, wiping sweat from his face, in the most complacent mood went to the half-boat and suddenly saw a sailor machinist with a cauldron in his hand jump out of the paint shop. Radiuk grabbed the kettle, looked at its contents and rushed to the paint shop. One can imagine his fury when he found the coveted tank empty. A hail of curses was hurled at the grimy brigands. The midshipman immediately ran to Kabistov, complained about the robbery in broad daylight, asked permission to go around the cars and take the paint. The assistant commander laughed. "So our bosun will soon be stripped, and he will not know." On Radiuk's request to allow him to search the engine rooms to take away the paint, the lieutenant captain refused and ordered to dilute the paint again. In all the rooms of the ship, people are working tirelessly. Dirty, sweaty machinists in the cramped corridor of the shaft line are beating over the thrust bearing a complex and precise device weighing more than 1 ton. Grinding and banging are in the boiler rooms. Sitting in the furnaces and collectors of boilers that have not quite cooled down yet, sailors are scraping off soot and scale with scrapers. These are like chimney sweepers. A man looks out of the hatch, only the whites of his eyes shine on his black face. Every 50 minutes there is a break. The sailors rush to the half-bank to smoke. Here at these minutes there is noise, laughter. Sailors once again savour the details of how the machinists stole the paint from the paint shop. Kabistov, going around the ship, invited Kozinets to his cabin and began to reproach him for the fact that he is engaged only in his machines and does not care about painting cabins, tidying up the hull, decks, rigging. "You are ready to put everything on us," Kozinets parries, "but everyone should do his own work. By the way, you talk about painting the cabins, but you don't give us any paint. Our sailors have to steal it from the bosun." "No, we don't teach them to do it, but the situation forces them to do it." Kabistov wanted to object, but waved his hand. "I can't argue with you mechanics anyway. My cabin is located in the superstructure, and its portholes overlook the half bay, where you can hear the argument of young officers who went out for a smoke. Lieutenant Engineer Husik, commander of the movement group, is of course on the side of his superior Kozinets. He zealously begins to prove that machinists, the most conscientious people, They know and love technology, and in general, the 5th Combat Unit the most important on the ship. Now, at their request, mechanics the ship is on scheduled preventive maintenance, and the other units just lapped up to them. Hussicks all praise for the sailor machinists. After all, to admit any of them to an independent watch, he is thoroughly prepared. Sometimes even the flagship mechanic checks the knowledge of the sailor. After this guy is released to the department, he can give a whole lecture on mechanics and electrical engineering. But it can't be otherwise after all. This is the main combat unit which transports, feeds, heats, lights everyone on the ship. Not in vain the 5th Combat Unit is called the heart of the ship. Yarmak, an artilleryman, is the first one who can't stand it. Throwing a cigarette, he interrupts Hussick and begins to prove that the main combat unit on the ship is undoubtedly artillery, which every child knows. There would be no artillery and you would have long since ceased to exist with all your mechanics. Who does the fighting? Artillery. Who shot down the enemy airplane? Artillery. Who gets the commendation for that? The artilleryman. True, the mechanics were also praised, but only thanks to us. Wait a minute, Navigator Bormatin stops the artilleryman. You forget that the 1st Combat Unit on the ship is the navigational unit. Do you think it's for nothing? What would you do with your guns if we didn't bring the ship to the target point? I'm used to these arguments. Listening to them, I involuntarily recall Krylov's fable guns and sails. It's clear that the hotheads are wrong. Yes, perhaps the officers know as well as I do that all units are equally important on the ship. But I listen to these arguments with pleasure. Let them argue. Let everyone consider his specialty the most important, the best. It only speaks of love for one's work. There's nothing wrong with it, on the contrary, it's good for the whole ship. Commissioner Booth put an end to the argument. He came up to the officers and said, You have spoken very correctly here. All our specialties are the most important, and there are no secondary persons on our ship. And if so, it means that everyone must put all his strength into his work and take care that not only he and his subordinates, but also the rest of the units acted as best as possible, that we all helped each other more, worked as coherently as possible. The ship was visited by the commander of the squadron. Vladimirsky inquired how the repairs were going, went around the boiler and engine rooms, command posts. Having heard that the sailors undertook to make repairs in 5 days, the commander asked, Will not such a hurry affect the quality of work? Look, it is better to delay a day or two, but do everything properly. Booth and I assured him that there was no reason to worry. People are putting their hearts and souls into the work. Actually, I can only welcome the decision of your sailors, Vladimirsky said. I can't wait to see your ship back in service. Things are bad near Odessa. It is necessary to deliver their troops, ammunition, and remove the civilian population from the city. We have enough transports for that, but no one to guard them. All the destroyers are at sea. In the evening during dinner, I visited the machinist's cabin. Sailors sat closely at the table, ate in a hurry, as if someone drove them. But often the spoons froze in flight and dropped back into the bowl, because their owners suddenly jumped with laughter, clutching their stomachs. The culprit was Chief Petty Officer Vakilenko. He sat on a couch near the table and told funny stories. He was a master of storytelling. He would tell such stories that he would make the most serious man laugh. I noticed that in other cubicles during meals there was general chatter and joking banter. But here at the table we can hear only the voice of the Chief Petty Officer, interrupted by bursts of friendly laughter. Vakilenko alone speaks. The others only listen and press the borscht. Our Chief Petty Officer is a cunning one, whispers a day sailor to me. He speaks and speaks, but he doesn't give it to the sailors on purpose, so that they don't get distracted and have dinner faster. After dinner, according to the daily routine, we should have a rest, but the sailors return to the disassembled mechanisms. It is even harder to work in the evening. The ship is darkened, so all the portholes and hatches are closed. The heat is infernal everywhere. And then there's the power outage. The ship's power station does not work, the diesel engine is under repair, and from the shore the current is coming in or not. We work with emergency lanterns. What light from them? Woe. and yet the sailors are working. At midnight, Kabistov, and I summarized what we had done during the day. I listened. There's banging in the engine room. What's the matter? They've been playing the roll call for a long time. Let's go take a look. In the first engine room, in the dim light of the battery lantern, we saw the bowed figures of sailors. What are you doing here? Kabistov asked sternly. Who authorized you to stay here at night? The sailors were dumbfounded, silent. Petty Officer Misko appeared from behind the refrigerator. Comrade Commander, he says to me, if we rest, we won't assemble the shunting valve in time. We'll finish it, then we'll sleep. In the boiler rooms we also caught people. Here they are preparing to bath the boilers. This is the most labor-intensive work. Each water heating tube of the boiler must be cleaned with a special scraper on a flexible hose. And there are hundreds, thousands of such tubes. Here commands Junior Political Officer Noskov. He explained the night vigil simply. If we don't work round the clock, the repair will drag on for 2 weeks. And then we can't lag behind the turbine operators. We'd better let them keep up with us. LT. Golkin tracked me down. We need to check the equipment of the central artillery station. It used to be repaired only at the factory. And now there's no such factory in Sevastopol. Should we call in workers from another factory? But when will they get here? What to do? Can you manage? I asked the officer. We'll manage. Oh. Open up. It wasn't easy for me to say that short word. The central firing machine is more complicated and precise than any clockwork. That's why there are seals on every box. To remove these seals in peacetime was allowed only to specialists of the plant, and that after observing a number of formalities. Now our sailors are digging in the mysterious boxes, who had never even looked into them before. I couldn't sleep. Already at morning I went down to the central artillery post. The sailors are trim, strict, all in clean working clothes. The tips of cambric napkins peek out of their breast pockets, only they can wipe the gears of the finest mechanisms. The entrance to the room is tightly closed, so that not a speck of dust could not penetrate from the outside. So the work went on for a day, second, third. Sailors engaged in repairs at night, with difficulty put to rest in the daytime. Having slept for 2 or 3 hours, they returned to the mechanisms. In 5 days the ship was ready to go to sea. The commander of the squadron, having accepted my report, ordered to declare gratitude to the whole crew. Now you have to try out the mechanisms? He asked. Good, you'll go out on patrol today. In the evening on the destroyer again sounded the signal ship to battle and march ready. We left the bay at slow speed. Only Kabistov is on the bridge next to me. The rest of the officers are all downstairs listening to the mechanisms, checking the readings of the instruments. We on the bridge are also silent, straining our ears, trying to guess by the vibration of the hull and the noise coming from below whether everything is all right. I give medium, then full throttle. Reports are coming to the bridge the machines are working normally, weapons are in full working order. So we can fight. Again and again we test the mechanisms in different modes. Meanwhile, the upper watch is looking into the night. After all, we are on patrol performing a combat mission. Watch service is special. It consists in the fact that the ship vigilantly controls the specified area and in case of detection of the enemy reports about it to the command, if necessary, enters the battle, trying to delay the enemy until the approach of reinforcements or trying to lure him to our mine positions. The commander on watch calculates the ship's courses so as to provide the maximum range of vision, using both the bright part of the horizon and the moon track and other circumstances that facilitate observation. It is advisable to change observers more frequently to avoid eye fatigue. Before the observer goes to his post, he is kept in a darkened room so that his eyes become accustomed to the night gloom. Special attention is paid to light cloaking. The ship is darkened so that not a single ray of light breaks through, not a single spark escapes from the smokestack. There is a struggle for silence. Walking on the upper deck is limited to the limit. Turbofans work at low speeds. The most important concern of the commander is the constant combat readiness of the entire crew. Ammunition has already been fed to the guns. The crews are at their battle stations and can fire at the first signal without waiting for the alarm to be sounded. Officers are silently going around the battle stations, checking how the men are keeping watch. We have to take into account that the sailors are tired during the busy days of repair. It takes tremendous willpower to keep the tired men awake in this languid silence. A young signalman stands beside me. He is leaning on the rail with his night binoculars to his eyes. But when I looked closer, I realized he was asleep. Standing and sleeping. I took him off watch. At other times I would have punished him severely, but now I couldn't. The guy had worked for several days without rest. Oh, and the night is getting darker and darker. You can't see anything within 3 cable meters. I looked at my watch. Only 2 hours we are at the position. Time flows agonizingly slow. Staring into the darkness, we quietly talk to Kabistov. The aide is suddenly interested in my biography. Hours like these are conducive to frankness. Even a dry, taciturn man like my assistant. Grigory Pudovich, I've been looking at you since college. Why did you turn grey so early? Admittedly, I was a little confused by this question. To gather my thoughts, I began to fill my pipe and handed the kit set to Kabistov. Where did the grey hair come from, you ask? You and I have had a hard life. You, Alexei Nikolaevich, had a hard childhood too. Your father, as far as I know, was killed at the storming of winter. The large family was left on the shoulders of your mother, a worker in a weaving factory. To help her, you started working as a child. You were able to study after the Civil War. And my childhood was cold and hungry. In the 14th year my father was taken to the front, the family was left without a breadwinner, and it was big 7 children. I went to the mine as a teenager, taking coal out of the drifts on sledges. Do you know what it is? You put on a sled and crawl on all 4s in the dark, stuffiness and dust. Then I became a slaughterman. You work all day with a pickaxe, and the contractor pays you a few kopecks, and you don't have enough for lunch. One day we were swamped. It was a miracle we survived. We waited in vain for help. The owners needed coal. It was not profitable for them to leave people for rescue work. We dug ourselves out like moles. It was scary to look at us people from the other side of the world. That day the owner did not pay us a penny, because we were not mining coal, but saving our lives. That's how I lived. Already under the Soviet power I learned what a school is. I'm sitting in the 1st grade with kids. They tease me, Daddy, it was hard. I went naked and undressed, but I studied. The Soviet power didn't leave me in trouble. Helped me to become a man. Now you and I are on the bridge of a warship. We have higher education. We and our families have found real happiness, and we defend it in battles. We fight for the fact that our young men never again grade in their 20s. In the morning, Ruthless returned to the base. Mechanisms of the ship worked flawlessly. The destroyer was ready to fulfill new combat missions. Return to base for sailors is always a holiday. The war overshadowed it. Sevastopol is now austere and harsh. Streets are blocked by barricades, dug trenches. Passers-by are few. People are working in factories or digging fortifications around the city. More and more often raid on Sevastopol enemy planes. And yet, entering Sevastopol bays, we still feel the joyful excitement. On the ships standing at the piers, flags are flying congratulations on a safe return. We wish you further success in combat. Comrades are greeting us. The family of sailors became even more friendly. Now, even in the base, we almost never part with the ship. On it now passes our whole life. In the evenings, the officers of the squadron gather in the wardroom of some ship, have a friendly conversation, recall episodes of combat campaigns, share experiences, argue. The soul and organizer of friendly meetings is the commander of the squadron. Rear Admiral Vladimirsky and Brigadier Commissar Semin almost every evening invited to his battleship to the commanders of ships. Such meetings give us a lot. Over tea I once told about the ingenuity of our anti-aircraft gunners. During the reflection of the attack of enemy planes, so hot gun barrels that it was time to stop firing, and suddenly I saw sailors pulled up fire hoses and poured water on the gun barrels. This method of cooling the guns was not provided for in the instructions. But it helped in the battle, The firing didn't stop. And then it turned out that dousing with water increases the service life of the barrels. Still, I have doubts we are acting contrary to the instructions. The commanders were interested in my story, and Vladimirsky, with his usual straightforwardness, said, "Well done, sailors, and we will correct the instructions." During conversations strongly got some of us, if in battle we acted ineptly or poorly set up the service on the ship. I had to blush more than once. Once, returning from a campaign, we moored at the wall next to the destroyer Boykim. In order to prevent the ships from hitting each other, the officer on watch ordered to put out Krantz wicker cushions protecting the ship's hull from shocks, and forgot about them. In the morning we moved away from the wall and looked the whole side of the Boykoi. It was covered with cranes, but we had none. The commander of Boyki, Lieutenant Commander Godlewski, is standing on the deck of his ship, waving his hand. "Don't be sorry for the cranes. They were yours and now they are ours. It's not customary to return when you've already received the good to leave, so I had to part with my property." I told Kabistov off. He just twists his head guiltily. I don't understand how it happened, but it was simple. Godlewski bypassed his ship at night, and at the same time and looked out for his neighbour. He chose the moment when there was not a soul on our upper deck, and ordered his bosun to untie our cranes and tie them to the leering posts of Boyki. At tea in the presence of the commander, I jokingly complained about Godlewski's prank. I wish he hadn't done it. The bulkheads of the battleship's huge wardroom seemed to shake with laughter. "What a watch service you have," came the cheerful voices. "Look, next time Georgy Fedorovitch will borrow your cannon too." I was ready to fall through the deck. I was consoled by the fact that Godlewski also got it that time, and not so much for the story with the cranes, as for daring. Georgy Fedorovitch was not a bad commander, brave, resolute, but not too hot. If he had his way, he would approach the mooring to the wall at full speed. How many times Vladimirsky punished him for that? Godlewski gave me back the cranes. Actually, he and I are friends. All destroyer commanders are connected by a strong friendship. Each helps his comrade as much as he can, and in battle, any of them will not spare his life to help his neighbour. But this does not prevent good, useful competition. What commander does not try to make his ship the best? Communication between Crimea and the rest of the country is difficult. The Germans are about to cut the railroads. Our sea routes are under continuous attacks of fascist aviation. Commander of the Black Sea Fleet Vice Admiral F.S. Oktyabrsky, the Military Council of the Fleet, the City Party Committee called on sailors and the population of Sevastopol to mobilize all local resources for the needs of defense. The city is equipped with underground workshops for repair and manufacture of weapons. At the cost of enormous efforts, supported the activities of the naval plant, repairing warships. Enemy bombings destroy the shops. People die at the machines. Workers under the bombs rebuild the destroyed. The factory doesn't stop for a single day. Now, even in the base we feel ourselves in battle. Anti-aircraft gun crews do not leave their battle stations for days, now and then opening fire on enemy planes. The whole crew is in constant readiness. Sailors do not get off the ships, and the fact that they are now always together even more united them. Officers are closer to the sailors, spend all their time with them. A unit commander is rarely in his quarters. He is either on deck, or in the cockpit, or on combat duty, always among his subordinates. The officer has grown into the sailor family. This is a big deal. The discipline has become stronger, higher commander's authority. Sailors with all their hearts attached to their bosses, ready to follow them in fire and water. What else can a commander dream of? Sailors spend time, free from watch, together. Intimate conversations arise. More and more often there is music and songs in the cabin or on the ute. We have never had such a well-developed amateur activity. Even I am carried away by the general flow. If the guys ask me, I take an accordion, play, sing together with them. Doesn't that hurt my authority? I'm sure not. Closeness to subordinates has never harmed a commander. One day after dinner, Kozinets sought me out. The mechanical engineer looked solemn and important. Comrade Commander, we invite you to the concert of the 5th Combat Unit. Where are you performing? On the half bank. I'll be sure to come. After Kozinets left, the Commissar said to me, the machinists are acting on their own. They didn't want to coordinate the concert program with me. A secret, they say. Maybe it's not necessary to coordinate it every time. Our sailors are headstrong people. They won't get on stage with nonsense. That's so, but we need control. He continued to grumble and sat down on a can among other spectators. Near the very joyous the Bowflagger Choir was lined up. Its leader, Senior Engineer Lieutenant Seletsky, turned to the audience and announced, a song about the destroyer Bispakadny. Sailor Cherdnichenko stretched the accordion bellows. The familiar melody of the popular song Armour is strong and our tanks are fast began to flow. Everyone looked at each other perplexed. But now the soloists of the choir sang. The words were not about tankers, but about the sailors of our destroyer. The order was simple and clear to everyone. To crush the enemy, to defend Odessa, with the fire of the mighty long-range turrets. To help the Marines in the battles. The chorus rang out. Noisy water, broken by propellers. We're off on a long combat voyage. Brave onward. The whole motherland is behind us. She's calling us to battle, to heroic deeds. And again the voices of the soloists. Be strong. Odessa, the day will come. We'll defend our native shores. The destroyer Merciless is coming to you. To slaughter the sworn enemy. I looked back. Spellbound, listened to the sailors. Booth stared with wide-open eyes at the singers, and on his face was both surprise and admiration. The chorus sang more and more amicably. The newly born song floated over the quiet bay. On the decks of the neighbouring ships, the sailors huddled together, they listened too. And the song told about how the Merciless entered into duels with enemy batteries, how its shells swept Nazi infantry and tanks to the ground, how, shot down by sailors' anti-aircraft guns, 2 airplanes with swastika on their wings found their end at the bottom of the Black Sea. I am not versed in the subtleties of poetry. Maybe the words of the song weren't particularly well crafted, but it was our song, about our ruthless, about us. That's why it immediately won the sailors' hearts. And now the chorus is picked up by many dozens of voices. Noisy water, broken by the propellers. We're off on a long combat voyage. Brave onward. The whole motherland is behind us. She calls us to battle, to exploits. There were words like that. Neither bombs nor hardships can break us. Our blow is irresistible and accurate. For we have with us the brave Commander Negoda, and Booth, our glorious Commissar, is with us. Well, that's wrong. Booth burst into flames. The whole song is spoiled. I'll make you throw it out. The song ended with the assurance that the enemy will be defeated and ruthless to live for centuries. The sailors sang with enthusiasm. Seletsky, joyful, radiant, conducted a huge choir. When the song ended, there were shouts. Repeat. The author in the middle. Give me the author. Seletsky led out the embarrassed sailor Sergeyev by the hand. The Commissar jumped up and rushed to the signalman. Thank you, Sergeyev. The sailors shouted without ceasing. Bravo, Sergeyev. Well done, Sergeyev. Hooray. Hurt Booth returned to his seat. Well? Has the offence passed? I asked him. What offence? And that you were not introduced to the programme of the concert. What a trickster, devils. The song about the Merciless was blaring over the bay again. Strictly speaking, the concert was disrupted, because the other numbers of the programme were not shown. The sailors kept asking to repeat the song and sang it selflessly. ... Chips, and in the base did not stand idle. The squadron commander demanded that the time of parking be used for intensive training. The ships went out for firing practice. We, too, had an opportunity to practice firing at a naval target. The drill was conducted with every precaution. 2 of our fighters were barreling over us. We kept all anti-aircraft guns at the ready in case enemy planes showed up. The shield was towed by the Boyki. Godlewski, of course, pulled it at full throttle and manoeuvred so that rangefinders barely had time to keep the target in sight. We shot off perfectly. Godlewski checked the shield with the pickiness of a rival. He counted 6 holes. "That's good," he said, and I could hear the envy in his voice.